T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You are now tapped into the coolest reptile podcast in the world. Welcome to Trap Talk Reptile Podcast, episode 381. Elite Emerald Tree Boa Talk, coming right at you with Dr. Booth and Coach Rice. I'm your boy, MJ. What is good? Hope everyone's doing great out there. If this is your first time tapping in, do me a favor. Why don't we just get the like button smacked right now? Get that out of the way. Free feature, please. And if this is your first time tapping in, hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. And then select all, and you'll be notified on any piece of content I drop here on this podcast. You could listen to Trap Talk Reptile Podcast on all the major audio platforms, such as Buzzsprout, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to those as well. Thank you so much for all the love and support. If you're looking for exclusive content, if you like to tap in with an awesome group of people, but people who have like longevity in this reptile industry, please go down to the very first link you see at the top. Click on it and join the Trap Talk Patreon family. As soon as you join the Patreon family, you get a link to the Discord, which will tap you in with over 170 trappers. I am so thankful for all the love and support, but goddamn, this family growing, and I love you all. God damn it, we're all here to win. We're all here, and we're all going to eat. So gotta say, see you at the top, guys. Don't forget, support US ARC, very important. This podcast is a US ARC Gold member, and yeah, US ARC. God damn, I love Phil Goss. I'm serious, though. Go to usarc.org. If you have no idea what US ARC is and you do keep a reptile, it's very important that you understand what this organization is all about. And if you support US ARC, thank you for being on the same team. And yes, thank you so much again to the entire US ARC team. I do want to say that tonight's episode is brought to you by my boy Elijah over at Juggernaut Reptiles. Okay, killing it in the short tail game for many, many years, but also has his hands dabbled in some other species of pythons. Go follow him on Instagram, please. Juggernaut Reptiles, okay? Go see what he has going on. Shout out to him and his wife, Tiffany. But seriously, guys, these guys are OGs in the game, and they support this podcast. It means a lot. Thank you so much, Juggernaut Reptiles. I want to say also that please go follow and support my good people over at Rare Genetics, Inc. The future is damn going to smack us in the forehead because so many things to come, so many things happening, mainly in the ball python world, but this just means other stuff will be coming to other species, I would assume. So guys, please go to their website, first and foremost. If you're in the ball python game and you got those sheds, you need to test them, go through Rare Genetics Inc. Also follow them on Instagram. Ben, thank you so much for all that you do. Shout out to the silent partner, the main guy, Sean. Shout out to Sean. Looking forward to meeting Sean someday. But yes, thank you so much. I do want to say, man, my condolences to the Ship Your Reptiles family. My heart, man, my heart's broken right now. And I want to keep myself together because I met this guy, Terry, from the Ship Your Reptiles family, and Terry unfortunately passed away. I do want to say I'm so sorry to his family, his loved ones. And again, I'm sorry for the loss, Ship Your Reptiles. Really unfortunate. And I only got to meet Terry because of Susie and Chad. So very bummer, man. It sucks. I saw him at Pomona too. Literally, it was short when I got to see him, but I see him at Pomona. Said hi to him. We talked briefly, and you're gonna be missed, Terry. Sorry you're no longer here with us, man. And rest in peace, Terry from Ship Your Reptiles. Use promo code, please, on your next shipment. Trap Talk. Save yourself $15. And yeah, thank you, Ship Your Reptiles, for doing the best work in the shipping industry when it comes to reptiles, and for being the #1 shipping company in the game, the real OGs since 2009. Thank you so much, Ship Your Reptiles. All right, guys, here he is, David Levison. You guys probably thought he wasn't coming tonight. I bet you thought he wasn't coming tonight, and he's here.
I'm happy to be here, buddy. I missed it. It's been weeks. It's been weeks and weeks and weeks, man.
It's been too long, man. How's your finger?
That's broken as fuck. Yeah. Oh.
You're fine.
Wait, we're past the first minute. We're good, right?
We're solid. We can say fuck all we want. We're good.
All right. Cool.
No, dude. So obviously I haven't spoken to you too much fresh from Daytona. How was Daytona, buddy?
Daytona was nice. Weather was perfect. A lot of really cool animals at the show. I had a great time, like always.
Right. And no disrespect, but I think we're going to have an even more of a great time because we have Dr. Warren Booth in the building, a good friend of ours. How do you feel about Dr. Warren Booth tapping in with us tonight?
I'm very happy to talk to Warren. It's been a while. I'm excited.
Me too. He's a wealth of knowledge and also a really good friend. Always there anytime I need him. And so with Christopher Rice, aka Coach Rice, somebody who I've been looking up to when it comes to having success when breeding northern emerald tree boas. And I know you appreciate a northern emerald tree boa, but you're not like you don't know who Chris Rice is, do you? Have you ever tapped in with Chris Rice by chance?
I don't even think we're friends. When I posted the podcast, I couldn't even tag him in it. So this is going to be a new experience, but new conversations.
Perfect. Either way, I'm excited for you guys to meet. Also, somebody very impactful when it comes to talking about the species of snake that we're going to be talking to tonight, man. But I'm so stoked. There's a lot of people in the live chats I know that are excited for this episode, probably because you're here tonight, as always. But guys, if you're in the live chats tonight, if you have an important topic, something you want to throw out there, don't be shy with the super chats. Or if you want to support this episode, or you think this episode is worthy of a super chat, toss a super chat, man. But let's see who's here tonight. Let's see who's ready, Dave. Oh, Mike's monitors. What a guy. Uncle Mike. I know you know who Uncle Mike is.
Oh, I like me some Mike.
I love me some Mike. I don't know if it's aftershave. I'm not too sure if it's the musk, but I love the smell you smell when you hug Uncle Mike. He's just that. Maybe it's the leather. I think it's the leather.
It's the leather. I was going to say it's the leather, buddy.
Damn it, man. Good to see you, Uncle Mike. I appreciate you. Big Mike, 1776 Exotics in the building. Trap Talk Patreon member. Miller's Menagerie in the building. What is good? Trap Talk Patreon member. Lily, my big sis in the building. What is good? Trap Talk Patreon member. Deviant Glass. He posts some really good art pieces, if you know what I mean, Dave. Maybe, hey, can you do something, Deviant? Can you do something custom for my boy Dave here? I don't know. Brainstorm it. Let me know. But he does some really good work when it comes to blowing glass.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, glass. Yeah. Anyways, thanks for tapping in. Aurelio in the building. What is good? Big Keys. Constrictors in the building. What is good? North Star Exotics in the building. What is good? Emilio Villarino, Trap Talk Patreon member, V Unit Boss in the building. What is up? Faster Than Life Reptiles in the building. What is up? Trap Talk Patreon member. Trademan Exotics in the building. Trap Talk Patreon member. My Snake Addiction in the building. What is good? Mika Sumter, aka Patreon member in the building. Arizona in the house. And we're gonna end this in style, man. Shout out to my boy Morph Valley Reptiles, who sent me some merch, and he insisted on sending me a brown shirt. I'm not gonna lie, I thought I was gonna toss that brown shirt somewhere, but I liked it. It was a good tone of brown, and I'm gonna keep it. And I'm gonna rock it. So thank you so much for that shirt, Morph Valley Reptiles. Trap Talk Patreon member, V Unit family. Are you ready to go, Dave? I'm excited. Matching. We're wearing team shirts today. All right. But guys, let's go. Do what you got to do to stay hydrated. Do what you do to get your mind right. But let's do this. Episode 381, Elite Emerald Tree Boa Talk. Right now, let's go. You ready for do more in the future? Trap Talk podcasts?
Yes.
Man,
Only Trap Talk. Exclusive.
Yes,
Tell 'em.
exclusive. Oh,
So stop calling us.
Rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the drop, gotta love it or not. I'm hot from the hop to the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with everybody, we do it. Everybody, we do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up.
we're live. Episode 381. With the team right here. What is good? Warren, Dr. Warren Booth in his new office. Looking good. What's up, buddy?
Not much. How are you?
I'm excited.
What's up, Warren?
Yeah, how are you doing, man?
So nice to meet you. First time here.
To meet you finally.
Oh, wait. Hold on. And then, of course, Chris, a.k.a. Coach Rice, you haven't met Warren either?
No, I mean, we've of course chatted and everything, but no video calls or anything yet. And Dave, neither as well. Although I saw you afar from at Daytona, but you were busy and I just didn't want to bother you. So
Maybe next time, buddy. Maybe next time.
But I was unmistakable. I'm like, is that Dave? Yeah, of course that's Dave. I guess immediately knew from the beard. So
before I even met Dave, I always saw Dave from far away. Like Dave is something.
Yeah.
If he's in the room, you're gonna look at him.
You'll catch it.
It's called peacocking, buddy. I'm always peacocking.
No, but gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Man, first and foremost, Warren, man, you've gone through a lot over the course of I don't know how many months, but the whole move, you must have been a whole lot of stress. That's all I got to say. But let's catch up on that. How's everything as far as right now, your current situation, moving from Oklahoma to West Virginia, was it?
Virginia. No, Western Virginia, not West Virginia.
Oh, but man, what a move. How's it been? What's going on with it?
It's good. You know that since January, every 2 weeks I was driving 1,050 miles from Tulsa to Blacksburg, Virginia, and back.
Wow.
Spending 2 weeks there and 2 weeks here. In the process, getting the house ready to sell, setting up the lab here. So I moved all of my animals in 2 lots to a friend of mine in Knoxville, somebody that I've known for 30 years. I've known him from Northern Ireland, and he ended up being 3 hours from here. He's one of my best friends. So he looked after everything. And during I would stay with them, on my drive across, because it was 14 and a half hours to get from there to here. So in my trips back and forward, I would check on the animals, and every so often I'd pair some things up. And my year of not breeding turned out to be a really successful year of breeding. I've had, I think, 4 or 5 different litters, which has been good. But, we moved in, I think 7 weeks ago into the house. The basement is unfinished, only partially finished. It's got stud walls in most of it. I finished up one of the rooms, drywalled it and stuff like that. So now I've got the snakes in 2 separate rooms in the basement, and that's kind of pretty much done. So it's just a matter right now. It's just getting everything back on feeding schedules and getting them ready for the fall. I think I'm going to be pairing 12 or 15 different pairings this year, of which, there should be probably 4 or 5 which are Corrales.
Wow. Okay. So you
probably 2 or 3 being emeralds.
You selectively just wanted to pair things in the moment of your buddy taking care of, just to see what would happen. Basically.
Well, no, it was more of when I was there and I saw kind of signs of they were getting close to ovulating or they were building follicles.
Okay.
And I certainly didn't feed. A lot of these animals were being fed once a month, if that, in that kind of 6-month period, just because it wasn't possible for me to be feeding animals and then cleaning them up. It just was difficult. So. But the ones that were ready to go, they went, and I think all but 2 pairs of animals that I put together produced. So it was kind of crazy. So I got some Trinidad Corrales Richenbergeri.
That's the biggest one, you would say? I mean, come on, you've been wanting that one for a while.
Pretty badass.
Oh, that's pretty nice. So we've had a bunch of those, so that's nice. And then I had a couple of litters of. I've got a Boa Sigma litter, and then a couple of Boa Imperator Costa Rican T-positive line stuff. So yeah, it was fun. It was nice to just get me animals to hold back, and now I've got a bunch of freaking more Trinidad tree boas. So I've got like 20-something Trinidads sitting at my house, which is a nightmare on top of everything else.
Now you're flooded with them. That's crazy how it works.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Anything that you could talk as far as what turned the corner on these, or were you just not pairing them up? Like how did this come about?
I wasn't pairing stuff. So we have 10 adults that were brought in from the wild, with an interaction that we were doing with a project we were doing with the Trinidad government. 3 males, 7 females. We have produced litters from, I think we've had 4. I think this is the 5th litter we've had, or the 4th litter. I think one of them was still born a couple of years ago, but it's just a matter of waiting until animals were right to pair them. I'm not in any rush to do things.
Right.
But this pair were ready to breed. The female is, she eats kind of medium to large rats. She's a large animal, and yeah, she produced 9 babies, 2 slugs. Interestingly, something I haven't seen before is that as soon as they were coming out, they were shedding within hours of being born.
I was going to ask you about that. That's not, you don't normally see that with them, do you?
Yeah, we've seen it in the Trinidad, but we haven't seen it in the Venezuelans, and we haven't seen it in the Costa Ricans that we produced. That was kind of unusual. And they're all, you see there's no variation in the litter. That's typical of Trinidad's. We've only produced 2 litters that have had 2 gray babies in it that were very, very solid gray, totally different. But everything else is just that they're all that golden kind of orange color, So, and just like the parents, they're assholes. So. Yeah, they're just there to.
Does that mean easy to feed, though?
Well, we'll see. In the past, we've had pretty good success just leaving in kind of hopper mice or small mice defrosted at the bottom of the cage overnight. I tried a couple last night, and they were striking at them, but they weren't really showing any interest. So I'm not in any rush. They're all looking really good. So I'll wait another couple of weeks, and if I need to, then I found before scenting with. Either just chicken broth, defrost pink rats with chicken broth, or that company that makes the lizard juice.
Reptiles.
Yeah,
Reptiles. Yeah, their annual one seemed to work pretty good as well. So generally one feed like that, and then they're straight on to defrost pink rats. So but yeah, they're really good. So they'll keep me occupied for a while.
Where would you want to rank these as far as like compared to establishing? Like, would it be more difficult than an emerald tree boa that we're about to talk about tonight? Or
I've never had problems establishing emeralds. They always start on defrost hopper mice or defrost pink rats.
Really hot, right?
Really hot. And we'll talk about it later on. But I've got my little routine that I do. Cool. But these here, because they're more of a lizard feeder in the wild when they're born. Or frogs, you've got that slight hump to get over. But it's just patience, You just got to learn that you can't rush these things. If you try them too early, then you stress them out and their metabolism ramps up and they lose weight really quickly and they'll die pretty quickly. If you leave them until they really start showing signs that they want to eat, sitting perched and, doing the typical emerald kind of pose,
right,
then you tend to have more success.
Got it.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, Chris, I want to know exactly how you feel so far, how things been going for you. I mean, I don't know if it's something in the air with emerald tree boas, but man, haven't seen too much of a 100% success rate so far as lately with litters. I mean, I know shout out to Casper, but he went through the fucking ringer. Who else you recently? Marshall. Marshall. God damn! Shout out to Marshall, but he went through the ringer.
Even Ed had that. He had that litter from Draco, and that's just the 2 babies. I don't know what the rest of what else was in there, but right. As goofy as a question as this might sound, it almost you hear sometimes people say like, "Oh, it's a bad year for boas," or something like this, right? Is there any kind of actual evidence that there are bad years all around? Anything like that? Like anything cyclical that, or is it just seems that way when a bunch of people get have a little bit of bad luck?
I think that's a good question. I'd like to see kind of the data of all of the litters that are produced, because you're always going to have some that are crappy where the male was paired too late or too soon or not long enough, or the female wasn't of sufficient weight, but I think it's more of it's an individual by individual case. And I think people will probably just make more of a big deal when they hear it happening to other people. It's a good way of saying, well, my litter's crapped out, but it's not my fault, it's the environment. Instead of, well, maybe we should learn from this here. Maybe I did care a little bit too early. Maybe I tried to male to too many females, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what can you call it with the most recent litter that you had? Because I know it was I forget the name of the female, forgive me, but you had
Artemis.
Yes.
So
let's talk about that.
Hers this year was no good, and I wasn't. Towards the end of her gestation, I was kind of wondering. I'm like, she's not really. I don't know. She wasn't as active at night as I would have liked to have seen, and she just wasn't really acting quite right. And I can't put my finger on it exactly, but she dropped what, 7? I think it was 7 slugs and 2 very weak babies that didn't live long at all. They lived a few hours, and they kind of looked premature. Even though she was like 140, it was 145 or 146 days after POS. So I'm not sure exactly what went wrong. It is possible because I bred her the first time in 2021. Maybe she didn't have enough, weight back on her yet. That's a possibility. The timing was also different for her this year than it was the first time around, although she went really late in 2021. So her first litter in 2021, she didn't give birth until December. So it was, pretty late. But then this time she just dropped a bunk litter a couple weeks ago. So I'm not really 100% sure. The setup's a little bit different in the room that I keep her in versus the other females. So that's another possibility. But even I've wondered too, her first litter was not particularly great. And that was with the same male.
What was that ratio? How'd that work out?
The first one was what she had 5 live, 1 stillborn that was fully formed. And then I think it was the rest were slugs.
Like a lot? Like we're talking like almost just as many slugs?
Yeah, I think it was 8 slugs, something like that.
And then as you being such a boa guy, Warren, what do you look at a ratio like that? When you see that many slugs compared to ones that made it, what does that tell you?
Generally, it's a male issue. If the female's producing, that means that she has matured ova, and that they were there to be fertilized. So the fertilization happens prior to the release. So whenever you see the ovulation, the fertilization has occurred prior to that.
Yeah.
So generally, it's a male issue. Either sperm quality was poor, or they were paired early and separated, or they bred really early and she didn't ovulate until late. Generally, what I do, I think I've mentioned it before. Whenever I pair animals, they generally take about a month before they start showing activity. They start breeding for me in like October, November, but they really kick in the kind of January, February time.
Yeah.
Once I see consistent daily locks, then what I do is I separate them and I feed the female a huge meal. And at that point, that kind of pushes the female to ovulate. And it's right after that she has been breeding heavily, so there's less likelihood of sperm quality decreasing. What I found over the years with boas is that unlike pythons that can store sperm, blood pythons can store sperm for 2 or 3 years, ball pythons for 2 or 3 years. Boas, after 1 year, that sperm quality, even within a season, decreases dramatically, and you'll end up getting either a bunch of really weak babies or just infertile ova. So
you notice that more with live bearing species over egg?
No, because we find rattlesnakes, for example, can store sperm for 7 years and produce really healthy litters and produce multiple litters over multiple years from a single breeding. So but then again, boas and rattlesnakes are separated by many million years of evolution. But I don't think it's a live bearer thing. I think it's just a trait of boas. I think boa. Whenever I see people posting about or contacting me about unusual litters, females that produce babies a year after they were paired, the babies tend to be really crappy. Pythons are totally different. They tend to produce. They tend to be really healthy. I think just boas in general just don't produce. They don't have the ability to store sperm very well. Things like rattlesnakes, any of the pit vipers have modified. They have structures within their reproductive tracts that allow them to store sperm for a long period of time. The uterus twists, for example, they've got these little pockets that will store sperm and then release them. I don't see that in boas. I haven't heard of that in boas. So I think the sperm is just there floating around. It's not kind of locked up in anything, and it's just degrading. So sperm and eggs, whenever they're in the uterine tract, they're getting bombarded by lots of different things that will cause mutations and will cause it to degrade. And I think that they just don't do very well.
One more question on that. Is there anything with the sperm passing to the ovum that could stop the sperm from getting where it needs to be? Like anything?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Now, have you guys noticed when you have females that are slugging out, do your first couple come out babies and the rest come out slug, or do you find it's reversed? Or is it very sporadic?
So I haven't noticed it myself. I don't really have a lot of slugs in litters. Maybe one or two, but in the last 27 years of producing boas over, multiple litters a year, I've only ever had 2 litters that were completely slugs, maybe 3, and that's out of well over 100 litters. But I'm very strict, and I've got 1 male that I pair with 1 female, and I keep them throughout the season, the reproductive season together. I don't separate them. I don't feed them. I don't, they're on a very strict kind of routine. So I rarely see any slugs, and even in litters, I'll see maybe 1 slug, maybe 2, but out of a litter of 12 or 15. With my emeralds, I've got a female that will consistently produce 5 babies and 1 slug every single time. But what drives that? I think it's probably, I feel it's a male issue. I think the male has just been, they've either bred too early prior to ovulation, or else they probably haven't cycled well. These boas still need to cycle to allow spermatozoa to mature and so on.
Cycle as far as what type of cycling are we talking about?
It could be food, it could be light, it could be temperature. Boas, many snakes just need a single trigger. A lot of people do the whole light and the temperature and the feeding. Most of them only need 1 of those to really get them going.
Right.
And if they don't cycle for long enough, then or if they're kept too warm, for too long, that kind of thing, then it can cause sperm issues. Just like us, if we walk around in the old tight pants for too long, then you're likely to. That's why Dave has no children that he knows of.
On the topic of the male issue, what's confusing for me, I know I've heard of this with, I think Dan Maliri was mentioning about this, talking about amethystine pythons, and I believe I've heard people mention this with boas as well. I don't know much about it myself, so I'm curious. Do you think there's issues sometimes with specific males and specific females, incompatibility issues there? Because I wonder with her, because that same male bred with my anaconda phase female and produced a near full litter. Yeah, and I didn't do anything particularly different other than there is the possibility that the months that he was breeding with her, it was cooler.
Yeah, I know. I think that's totally a thing. We assume that just because they're animals that are of a insufficient or inferior kind of capacity to humans or higher vertebrates, that they should just breed with anything they see. Mm-hmm. I don't believe they do that. I think they show some level of choice. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it. I've had with Russian burgeri, I've had males in large enclosures with multiple females, mm-hmm. and the male will consistently breed a single female and ignore another one, which is totally fine, which is healthy, maturing follicles, and they just won't breed. They will never even wrap tails, never even court. So I think there is some level of choice there. I think males or females will show some level of choice, and we've seen that. Whenever I've paired animals together, sometimes you see the females kind of go wild. They'll kind of do this tail gaping, they'll thrash around, where it kind of shows they're either not ready, they're not compatible. So I totally agree with that. I think there is, and that's going to reduce the number of copulations that are successful, which is going to reduce the sperm deposition load, and it's going to reduce the likelihood of getting a healthy litter.
Yeah, it's definitely making me wonder if that just, because like I said, it was the same male both times I bred with her. And so I'm wondering if it's just maybe a different male might produce other, better results next time. I'm going to give her a couple years off anyways, but, I definitely was worried, wondering about that. And we'll see. He bred a different female this year, mm-hmm. After several months later on. So I don't know what the outcome there is yet. Of course, she's still a few months out, but it'll be interesting, to see how that pans out.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you would think a male that's being used a lot, do you feel like that sperm becomes weak after a while, or no? As long as it's rested, he's good. Or what do you think about as much as a female may need a break for a year or even 2 or even more. Casper's like, even Casper says 2 years is not enough from what he's experiencing. But either way, do you feel like it's just as important to give that male a break too?
You go ahead, Chris.
I mean, Warren's definitely got more experience in this with boas in general. So I know I've always heard that, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Warren, it doesn't seem like people spread males as thin with all boas in general as they do with, say, like ball pythons. You know, somebody will put a male to, you know, 6-7 different females in a season, and seems to have no issue really doing that. I have so far only put, you know, a male to 2 females in a season as far as with the emeralds. And we'll see what the outcome of that is. I'm still waiting for the second female. That was this year that happened. I would prefer normally, you know, going forward, hopefully I'll just focus on just, you know, single male to single female pairings and try to focus that, because really I don't know enough about it to say exactly why. I'm just kind of imitating what I've always heard from guys like Warren and I believe I may be misquoting here, but I believe, isn't that how Ben Russo genuinely does boas as well?
Yeah,
just single male to single female.
Yeah,
but then I've heard some people put multiple males to a single female too. So I think Ed does that, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's possible. It's all about timing. You know, one thing that people think is that snakes are producing sperm continually, like mammals, right? Mammals shoot the load, they're making more sperm. Snakes are not. They're producing it at the beginning of the season or prior to the season, and they're using that up. So you spread your male too thin, it's breeding all of these females, then it's depositing sperm in all of those. It's not making any more, you know. So therefore, the more you breed that male to more females, the more likely you are to get low sperm count further down the number of females you use. That's why I use 1 male to 1 female. You know?
Warren, do you prefer that? Like, would you recommend to anyone just stick to 1-on-1 if you can, and because playing that type of moving the male around other females is kind of could be a dicey game, or it could also eliminate a lot of risk as far as like, oh, you know, the whole slug situation or something like that.
You know, for me, I'm in no rush to produce animals. So if I've got a female that a pair that I'd like to produce from, I'll just put that pair together in October and I'll leave them together until March, or until I see the female ovulate and shed and let them ignore each other. I've got, and once they're done, I don't put him on another female. That's it. His season's over. You know, but again, as I've said before, I stop feeding all of my animals at the end of November, and they will not see food again until March. So it's not as if I'm separating them to feed them and so on. I just keep them together, leave them alone, and that's it.
And you don't feed them. You say you don't feed them while they're together?
No.
But then there is that one moment where you hit the female pretty hard after that initial first lock.
I take the male out at that point, and then I'll hit her with a large meal, and then monitor her, and then if I need to, I'll put the male back in. But more often than not, that female drives up into an ovulation, because you'll see with emeralds or any corals, you'll see that they'll get in that pre-ovulation point where they're starting to swell, and that swell will not last a day or two. It will last for a longer period. Once you see that, that's whenever I go for it.
For that meal or for that male?
For that meal, MEAL.
Okay, got it. The meal, and then you're saying, based off what you've experienced, if you don't need to add the male for the most part, because that's what's kicking everything into where it needs to go.
At that point, that's done. Once the female ovulates, the female has the sperm have already fertilized those ova.
Right.
The ovulation is actually the period where the ova that are fertilized are being released.
Right.
In the reproductive tract. So if a male breeds her at that point, after that, they're doing nothing, right? The fertilization has already taken place.
So how many locks are you seeing then? How many locks are you kind of like seeing from a 1 male to the female type?
I've seen the first time I ever bred Coralis was an Amazon tree boa, and it was a single pairing that lasted for about an hour and a half, and that female produced 21 babies.
An hour and a half? What? That was it?
It was truly that. I was maybe 17 years old. It was truly that, taking a male out, putting it in the enclosure beside her while I cleaned that enclosure. And then I looked in and they were pairing. I didn't know what the hell they were doing. And then once they were done, I put them back in and I fed them normally. And it was funny because it was that a week or two later that whenever I was buying my rodents, she would eat medium rats. was a really big Amazon, and they only had a large rat, and I got that instead. And within a week, she blew up, and 140 something days later, there was 21 babies in the enclosure. So there could be that, but I've seen with my emeralds, you know, as I said, I'll pair them in October, November time, generally November, and end of October, beginning of November time, and I'll see nothing happening, and then generally December time, I'll start seeing some breeding occurring, some tail wrapping, some courting, but it's generally January, February, mostly March that I see most of the breeding happening, and then it's October that I normally see babies. But also, once they really kick into it, they'll breed every day.
That's pretty much that's very similar to what I'm seeing here. You know, I've seen activity before January, but it's usually right around the end of January, somewhere in that time frame. And I've been basing a lot of the way I've been feeding less and less, based a lot heavily off of what I've seen you talk about with Corallus species of boas in general. So I follow a similar kind of timeline. I stopped feeding mine around the end of October, and then I was too chicken shit to wait all the way till March before. But every year I've like gone a little longer, so I've waited till, you know, I'll not feed them until January, and then I think this year I waited till closer to February, and then so I'm doing similar to that, but I am feeding them. One thing I've done a little different is when I have them paired and they're actively breeding, I will separate them and feed the female. And occasionally feed the male, but I follow a similar approach. I'll give her a few meals, kind of increasing in size, and then as they've been locking up and I'm starting to see her swell up, then I'll hit her with something, you know, like a particularly large meal. And I've seen a similar overall pattern in that, and that usually triggers, you know, ovulation down not long after that.
Yeah, I suppose part of it is also where you live in the country.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
So, you know, for me, living in whenever I was in Oklahoma and Tulsa, the room that I had where I kept my reptiles in the basement, it dropped down into the mid 60s at night. So the enclosure was getting colder in areas, so they were cycling based on temperature. My new room that I've got, it's going to stay more stable. It's going to probably be in the mid 70s, right? So it's going to be different. And now that I'm also moving from 500 feet above sea level to 2,000 feet. That could also have an effect. So this year could be very interesting in terms of what happens, because small changes that we don't necessarily think are going to be impactful could be very impactful. And what happens to people in California could be very different than what happens to people in North Carolina. So I think part of it is just knowing the rhythm of your room. You know, pairing animals to see what they do, I think, is fine. For some people, pairing them in September and seeing babies in June, July works great. For others, pairing for me, like November, December, and seeing babies in September, October works as well. So I think it's part of it is just knowing the rhythm of your room. Like what I would love to have ultimately are two groups, one that's going early season, one that's going late season.
Yeah.
But that takes time to be able to mature animals into that kind of cycle. Even if it's possible with things like emeralds, I'm not really sure.
Now, are you talking about trying to actually control that in terms of two separate rooms that you cycle separately? Oh yeah, that would be really interesting to do. See how that worked out.
I think you can do that. You know, if you've got captive bred animals, you can definitely raise them in that kind of alternate cycles.
Yeah.
It's more difficult whenever you bring in either mature adults or wild caught. Wild caught, I think, are very different animals in terms of how you breed them and the cycles that they follow. You know, because they're already kind of pre-programmed into a routine. We've seen it before. I've got boas that I can show you my records. They'll produce almost on the same day every other year. You know, they're really clued in. I've got a pair. I've got a Costa Rican Ruschenberger eye and a female emerald that for multiple times that they've produced, they've ovulated a day from each other and produced either on the same day or a day from each other.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah,
they're absolutely in sync.
Yeah.
Do any of you guys do any ultrasounding with this species? Well, no, not necessarily for that reason. I mean, one reason I ask you is this. Well, no, hear me out. Well, okay, so when Warren made the comment, don't even know what that means, Warren. I don't even know what you're talking about right now, buddy. Oh, you're palpitating. Okay. Well, the reason I ask is when you mentioned your end of season meal, that large meal, and get an ovulation soon afterwards, my curiosity is, about where your follicles at before that meal, and then after that meal, let's say a week later. I was just curious if you guys knew what the jump up was instead of just saying ovulation.
No, I've palpated emeralds and Amazons and Ruchenbergeri, and I've known, been able to count the number of follicles and general size. But these aren't ball pythons where you're happy to take them out and palpate them, because as much as people love to show their pictures of them holding their emeralds and their Amazons, they're not structured for that. They're the compression of the body, the shape is not. They're not comfortable being held. So therefore, the difference is whenever you take any animal out to palpate, it's very easy to kind of manipulate those. But emeralds are all floppy and they just don't work very well.
Yeah, I haven't even tried with mine.
The only time I've ever done that is if I've had to remove them from an enclosure and put them back in again, and I'll always palpate no matter what time of year. I'll check females. But what you see, Dave, is swelling. You'll notice the female starting to build follicles, and it's whenever you start seeing that and you see that consistent. You've seen it before in boas and pythons. Whenever you see that consistent swell, that's whenever I know to hit it, because I know the follicles are maturing at that point and they're large. It's different than if it's early and I'm not seeing any kind of obvious signs of maturing follicles. But no, I've never ultrasounded in my life. I thought when I did that crazy kind of venture into ball pythons a bunch of years ago, I thought about getting an ultrasound, and then thankfully I got out of them before I needed to buy an ultrasound. So, but even then, I wouldn't have got one because you can palpate. Some people can, some people can't. It's all, being able to palpate is not something that's easy.
No, I think people pick the wrong location on the animal a lot of times. They're feeling for the wrong thing. When they get small, they get discouraged and think they're not finding it.
Yeah.
My curiosity is just actual number jump. Are we talking? I just like hearing the numbers. And to go back to one other thing about your, you guys go by ovulation or post-ovulation shed?
Ovulation.
All right.
I've gone by post-ovulation shed, but
you go post-ovulation shed. So you said 141 or 144?
I've had different times, but yeah, this most recent one, she went, I think 146.
Okay.
What I set for like my kind of early just due date, like this is about as early as I would expect to see them, is 125 days after POS. Is like that. That's kind of like, all right, she's gonna go anytime after this. But I think probably, Warren, I can't remember now. Have you seen very consistent numbers?
Yeah, mine are
going just from the actual peak swelling of it.
The mid 140s post ovulation.
Okay.
But I also keep my animals warmer than a lot of people.
Okay.
A lot of people will talk about keeping emeralds at 82 degrees. I keep the ambient about 85.
Yeah, mine's
a hot spot where they can bask. I've got gravid females that will bask in the mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So most of them will bask around 86 or 87, but they will move between it. And I think having that hot spot, that will change how they the length of time for gestation. So, but I normally see 147 days from ovulation is normally the number that I look for. And the reason I do that is because I've had females that haven't went through a post-ovulation shed. They've shed mid-gestation, but they actually haven't gone through the, all of my boa sigma and boa imperata are always, 20 days after they ovulate, we see a shed. With Corrales, I don't see that always.
So Warren,
I haven't had enough numbers to compare to that. I've seen a POS right about 20, 21 days each with mine, but I'm
and I see the same with emeralds, Amazons, and Ruchenbergeri. And combined all together, I've had maybe, 35, 40 litters between the whole groups of those. And that's but the 147 is the number that always seems to come out for me.
So Warren, I was going to ask you, a female like you like to keep conditioned going into breeding, because I just want to clarify that you said that big meal comes after that lock, and that female hasn't been on food, right? So isn't there a little bit of a concern feeding such a big meal to a snake that hasn't eaten in so long, or you're not worried about that?
No, I don't see a problem with it. In the wild, they don't get to choose.
Okay.
They don't get to hold on and say, well, you know what? I really wanted a meal, and I was going to go for that large rat, but I prefer a small one because that's what I'm meant to do. I think a healthy animal can definitely take that.
Yeah.
I hear all this nonsense about it's a first-time breeding, so therefore I expect a lot of slugs. That's not the way it works. Animals in the wild are like we might have one shot of breeding and that's it before I get eaten.
Wow.
I'm not going to waste it on a bunch of slugs, you know. So
Right.
Yeah,
That's a question I have for you. So that's something that's interesting to me, the topic of slugs in the wild, like how often that's happening. Is it even really happening much at all? I've heard mixed opinion on it. I would think I would lean towards what you're saying. It doesn't seem likely that it would happen very often at all. Any real thoughts on why that would be? Like,
well, they've evolved in those environments.
So it's just everything's kind of firing off at the time it should.
If the environment resulted in a female wasting reproductive effort and producing a bunch of infertile ova, that's not the right environment for the animal to be in.
Yeah.
Right. Slugs are very much a captive syndrome. You know, I've had animals that we brought that have come in from the wild. I was involved with a project where we worked on copperheads, and we brought in gravid copperheads into captivity.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think, maybe there was only two instances where we find slugs in litters, which are maybe 45 or 50 litters, and they turned out to be associated with parthenogenesis, which is what was triggered for us in a study. Everything else produced healthy litters.
That's kind of what I've wondered about. Like,
slugs are a total captive syndrome, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's not a natural event. You know, animals, it's not as if they can turn around and say, well, you know, I'm going to really produce a crappy litter this time for no reason. I'm going to waste all of that energy that I've built up over the last couple of years. Because then, you know, there's been studies on timber rattlesnakes that have shown that sometimes they're very long-lived snakes, and they might produce once in 40 years. So they're not going to turn around and produce a really crappy litter in that one time. Even animals that produce yearly, a lot of colubrids, I think, will produce yearly or every 2 years. They're not going to waste reproductive effort because a lot of them will get killed or will get eaten or won't get reproduced another time. So it's that one shot and go for it, you know. So yeah, I think the slug issue is a very much a captive syndrome.
Yeah, I think Graziani was talking about it with somebody where they were discussing pythons in the wild in Florida, and I think the guy's question to Graziani was, how often do you find one that's not gravid? He's like, or not ones that are gravid that slug out, and he's like, never. Everything that we ever find gravid in the wild is always perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's evolution. That's what it drives. You know, adaptation to environments to have the most optimum reproductive rate that you can have.
Yeah.
Right? If it means that you can only reproduce every 10 years, fine. But in that year you reproduce, you're going to do it right. You're not going to dump a bunch of infertile ova. So.
Now, you know, for anyone out there, Warren, who's in the position, aka me, who's looking to get into ready to pair their emeralds going into whenever, see, like end of this year or January, for you, like, do you like to prep a female or a male? And what I mean by that, like, how are you keeping them diet wise? Like, as far as how many times are you feeding a male? How many times are you keeping a female? And then like the size of the meals before you get to the point where you're hitting her with that larger meal than normal.
Yeah, normally in the off season, I'll feed a female every 2 to 3 weeks. A large emerald, I'll feed a large rat. So normally my females are on medium to large rats every 2 to 3 weeks. In the kind of 6 weeks prior to stopping feed, I'll feed smaller meals, but I'll feed them every 10 days just to give them that boost. And then I'll cut that off. Then I'll, you know, they start getting paired a couple of weeks later. And I give them about a week or two to clear out, and then I'll pair them up because I don't want to go in and disturb them by having to clean out enclosures. And I'll keep them together right the way through till, as I say, until February, March. And once they see that female swelling, the building follicles, the male comes out, she gets fed a large meal, and that's it. I think emeralds are one of the easiest species to keep. I think we overthink it.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just a matter. They're very much a hands-off species. Leave them alone, feed them the appropriate size meals, and go from there.
You guys feed when they're gravid?
No, I'll offer. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if they feed, I'll totally feed them, and I'll feed them right through to the end. I'll offer food every 2 weeks. I'll offer a smaller meal. So if like a female that I was feeding a large rat to, or a medium rat, I'll offer a small rat. And the only reason for that is that once they come out the other end, once that female gives birth, they're not looking like a bag of crap, right?
Right.
There's still some meat to them.
Right.
And I'll feed them right the way through. Like some people will say that they'll stop feeding 2 weeks prior to them giving birth. I don't do that. I just, again, in the wild,
They want to eat. They want
the
to
opportunity to feed, they're going to take it, or
Yeah.
they're not going to take it. And I've got females that won't feed, and I've got females that will consistently feed.
That's
So
what I was going to ask you on that, because I know with the females I've bred so far, they'll want, they start refusing a few weeks before ovulating, and then I haven't offered food once they've ovulated going forward. Basically, I was just basing it off of what I've heard Vin Russo talk about, that they're evolved to not take food in the wild. I know there's mixed opinion on that, but I would be interested to experiment with that, because I know like you feed females that'll take. And I think Ed also does as well. He's mentioned that he'll definitely, if they'll take it, he'll feed them a small meal. So you've never seen anything suggesting like any impaction from feces or anything during that period?
No, I've never had an issue. And in fact, thinking about it this year, the litters that I've had so far, I've had all of my litters in like the space of 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and all of those females were fed a week prior to giving birth. Once they got back here, I started feeding them, because I didn't really look at them to think that they were gravid or not. And it was only after a while I was like, oh no, they're gravid. But I was still feeding them. If they're going to feed, they're going to feed.
Yeah.
And in the wild, they're going to take the opportunity to feed if something walks past them. So again, I don't think that evolution has resulted in a species that all of a sudden, if they eat, it's going to kill them.
Yeah.
If they're gravid, if the motivation is there, then go for it. I'm not going to feed them every day, but I'm going to offer them a smaller meal.
Yeah.
Because I've seen animals that have gone through gestation and looked like crap at the end of it, like ones that haven't fed, and they just look like a bag of bones at the end of it, and it takes them longer to get through it, recovering. But if the animal will take, I've got no problem feeding it a smaller meal. Snakes have an incredible ability to utilize a lot of that rodent that you give them.
Yeah.
They're not wasting a lot unless you're power feeding them, and it's coming at the other end. They utilize a lot of that pretty quickly. Dave, you were going to say something there?
Well, I was just so talking about feeding post ovulation. With any of your consistent females, you had a couple litters. For fun, have you ever maybe not fed them post ovulation and then did a gram weight on your baby to see if your babies are bigger or smaller?
No, because that would require work and effort, dedication, and this is a hobby, and I've also got young children and a job that keeps me really busy.
Okay, what about this rice guy over here? You got some time for that, man? You want to change up your routine, maybe?
I might experiment with that. I haven't actually. I should have weighed my emerald babies. Maybe I'll do it with the next litter, but I haven't actually been weighing them. From litter to litter. I started when I was first few chondro litters. I was totally geeking out and doing that and weighing them, and I've gotten a little lazier with it over time. I'm just like, all right, they look pretty good. They look healthy to me. They're feeding. They're doing what they need to do. I don't really care too much about the weight, but it's interesting. I mean, I was weighing females and doing all that stuff with chondros at the beginning, but I haven't really done any of that with emeralds. I'm just kind of eyeballing everything, really.
Yeah, I do it with the with the Trinidad Rickenbergeri. Any of the Rickenbergeri, I keep records for. Just because
is that for the because you're kind of doing this proper study
part of a
with
project,
those, right?
But and realistically, I should, because we're writing a book, on Corrales, and we're like, well, maybe I should start keeping records.
Yeah.
But I haven't. But the Corrales, I definitely do. I'm sorry, the Rickenbergeri, I do. I should keep records for the emeralds, but then again, I'm not breeding the numbers where I would have a bunch of emeralds that are feeding and a bunch of emeralds that are not. I'm never trying to produce a lot of animals. I like having a select group that I work with, and I want to produce select animals. I don't want to produce en masse. I don't want to produce a whole crap ton of baby emeralds, because I just don't think the market is really the right market for that.
Yeah.
What's the biggest litter you've ever had with the Northerns?
Me?
Yeah.
They're always small. I think 7 is the largest. But
do you have any really huge Northerns?
I do. My anacondas are big.
They are, okay.
So,
yeah. Like 6 foot, like approaching that length.
Oh yeah, large rats make
Yeah,
a very little dent on them. So this year, I'm really going to make an effort to pair those this year or next year. My other northerns are all, they'll eat medium rats, and they're good sized animals, but they're not like the stuff, MJ, that you've got. Some of those females are just absolutely humongous, and mine aren't comparable to that at all.
Wow.
Do you think any of that, because you've had a lot of Corrales and you've had quite a few Emeralds over the years, do you see any suggestion of there being, kind of just smaller bloodlines? That is that why you think you're seeing some smaller ones, or is it just random?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think definitely in all species you find a range, just like in humans. You get a range of size. What you'll also find, but that I've seen in boas, is that you'll get females that are the same size, and some of them will produce really big litters of small babies, and a female the same size will produce really small litters of big babies.
Yeah.
It's not as if they switch between those strategies. They're kind of locked in on that, and whether that's a trait that is, once they're locked in, that's just the way it goes, or whether that's a heritable condition, I think it's pretty heritable. And I'll know in a handful of years once I start breeding offspring of those, and I look at their litter sizes, litter ratios. But I think that's a really good question. I think there's a lot of variation in the species. It occupies a very large range.
Yeah.
And you're going to get a lot of variation within that there.
The issue you just mentioned of, certain females having small litters of huge babies versus, I remember reading, I think Trooper Walsh mentioned something similar, observing that with green tree pythons, that the egg mass tends to be very similar in size between different females. Actually, it's very consistent apparently, but it's just a matter of how many, is it a small clutch of very large eggs, or 20, 22 eggs, something like that. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, a really good friend of mine, Rich Eiley, he's the guy that developed the salmon boa. Rich and I, we spent a lot of time together over the years. We were talking about emeralds, I think last year, maybe 2 years ago. He and I and Dave Barker were sharing a cabin out in New Mexico, and Dave at Bob Ashley's place, and we were talking about emeralds. And Rich said that it was either 3 litters or 4 litters that he produced that year, his first time breeding emeralds, and the smallest litter, I think he said, was 18 babies.
Damn!
Wow!
I was like, oh crap. So he said they were humongous females right from the wild.
Yeah,
they'd been brought in that year they were just put together.
I think didn't Ed say? I think Ed's had like a 22 or 23 baby litter or something like that.
But then again, same thing with Amazons. I see a lot of these litters of Amazons with like 4 or 6 babies. My females were consistently producing 21 to 25 babies. Wow. Amazon tree boas, it's huge litters, but big females.
Yeah.
So I think the bloodline thing could be right, because mine were generations that I bred through multiple generations, and they consistently produced big litters. You see it in humans, where families produce, larger offspring versus smaller and so on. I think it's probably the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can select for it. The great thing is that we're still really early in the breeding hobby, in the hobby of breeding emeralds. But we're not line breeding very well. We had people like Rico that was line breeding. We've got Ed who's line breeding. You got Steve Vogel's line breeding. But there's not a lot of people truly, really line breeding animals through multiple generations to be able to say these ones consistently produce big litters versus small litters, big babies versus small babies, and so on.
Not yet.
You're right. Well, that's exactly it. And I think time will in 10 years, 15 years, I think we'll definitely start seeing some of that.
I think an important question I've been wanting to ask somebody like you, Warren, whenever you say I offer a large rat and a bigger one, do you ever weigh your rats? Like, do you have an idea what you consider a large rat is? Like
Cold-blooded cafe, look at their weight ratio. My rooms all come from cold-blooded cafe.
I know exactly how big those larges are.
I could not tell you, but I've never held one and said that's roughly a.
Those are large rats. No, because everyone has a different idea. Like sometimes, because they go through their supplier, and their supplier sometimes offers small, mediums, and large different sizes from others. You know what I mean? Every time I've gotten stuff from Cold-Blooded Cafe, it says what it is. It's a large.
I only buy from Cold-Blooded Cafe, really. So
okay, cool, awesome.
The room.
Are you guys incorporating birds into their diet at all? Or are you guys strictly mice and rats?
They don't eat birds in the wild. The birds don't make up a large component of their diet. The
No?
only time I'll use birds is in fresh wild caught that don't feed very well, or animals that go off food for a while. You'll get males that really like to fast during the off season, and I'll either give them a chick or else I'll send a rodent with a chick, and that'll kick them back in again. But I don't give them birds. There's no need to. This whole idea of varying up diets and this and that. A rodent contains everything a rodent eating snake needs. I don't think I need to switch between mice and rats and chicks and quail and parrots and everything else, you know?
Is it the idea though, is just to feed it kind of something smaller, lighter? Like just how you like kind of go from a large rat to a small rat, like wouldn't that kind of be the same thing if you wanted to go from a large rat to like a quail or something? I don't
think it does anything. I don't think there's any benefit to it. You know, what we know about boas and pythons is that I've talked about this before. Once they feed, within about 4 hours of eating a meal, hundreds of genes get upregulated, and they cause dramatic physiological changes in the animal. Heart doubles in size, blood becomes thick with plasma, intestines remodel. You know, physiologically a very stressful event, and that lasts for about 2 weeks. In my opinion, if you're going to do it, feed it right. Give it the meal that you think is going to, you know, do that animal for that period of time. If I'm feeding a snake once a month, then a large rat will work, or every 3 weeks. If I want to give smaller meals, that's fine. But I just go for that large meal infrequently. I don't, you know, as I say, the only time I offer birds is if an animal is not feeding.
In which that's mainly an import or something.
Yeah, and look at, and I've even had it with captive bred. You know, I've had animals that will just go off food, especially males in the breeding season. You know, getting them to kick back in again. But look at any of the gut content analysis that's been done on emeralds, and it's generally arboreal rodents that they're finding in the gut. They're not finding birds. You know, this idea that they got big teeth to get through the feathers is not true, because rodents have a lot of fur as well. It's just an evolutionary adaptation to not drop your meal from 30 feet above or 40 feet or 50 feet above the ground. So
wasn't there also a little bit of theory with that? Oh, sorry.
You'll find a lot of rodents in the canopy. So anytime I've been in the rainforest, you know, you put on your headlamp and you see eye shine of mammals in the trees. We see a lot of rodents running around the branches of the trees, more than I've ever seen on the ground.
Good point.
And is it true that a lot of those rodents? I remember, I think it was an interview with Igor. Didn't he mention something about like that the rodents that they tend to be eating, at least in Suriname, Guyana area, have kind of a really long, thick, wiry kind of fur to them?
Yeah, that's possible. I haven't really looked into that, but that's probably true. That is probably true. Yeah.
So yeah, with regards to birds, I haven't incorporated it at all yet. Other than occasionally, I had one juvenile import. It was a neonate actually that I used chick down. Actually, I didn't even actually give it a chick, and that's all I've done so far. But I know, you know, my friend Jake Daniel just recently got a fresh import to take a quail that didn't want anything else, and that got that animal to feed. And then Warren, you've used chicks and quail before, so I'm not opposed to trying it to get him to take if need be, but I haven't. I've thought about incorporating quail just for the variety factor into the regular diet, but I just haven't done it yet, and I'm kind of more in the camp of like what you're saying, Warren. I'm not totally sold that they need it.
I had that big female, Warren. Remember the one that you told me not to get at Arlington? And I was like, I'm just trying to experiment, man. And sure enough, that thing didn't eat for me for like, I don't know how many months. I know it was like on month 7 or 6. And I was trying all Warren's tricks, right? And but the one thing I noticed is like I wasn't heating up that damn quail hot enough. I was heating it up hot enough, but I went ahead and I heated the shit out of that quail. And sure enough, it took it. And it was a smaller one, but it took the other one too. It took 2 back-to-back quails. And I was like, and then
I got it, you know, where it's as long as the meal, the chick is hot enough, then they'll go for it. And I find that with these import females, once or twice like that, and then the next time I wash the rat and I defrost a bunch of chicks and the rat in a bag.
Yeah.
The heat mat, let them get really juicy.
Right.
And then offer the rat And if they don't take the rat, offer the chick, and then immediately after, offer the rat.
Yeah.
And then literally within 1 or 2 feeds of that, then they're on to rats. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep. But anyways, I'd rather not work with imports anymore. I just that was fun, but man, what a past. I'm good. I think I've already gone through enough. Now, one of the biggest blows I took, and I want to get right into this is, obviously, Warren, you were there, and also you, Coach Rice, you were there step by step when it came to me pairing my Miss Willie lines. And sure enough, I think it was like October is when I first had my first pairing paired up, and he went straight to town. Everything looked fine, and I kept them together, and I want to see. I saw quite a bit of activities. Now, I didn't do what you had just said, Warren. I didn't hit her with that big meal. I was feeding her just normally. You know what I mean? But I took off. Let's see. October is when I paired them. They were still together in December when I went to New York. And San Diego weather is weird. We have hot. We have hot fronts come from out of nowhere. When it's been cold and then the room gets really dry. What happened to be that in that first week in December when I took off and had my males paired up, we got hit really hard with the hot weekend with the crazy dry spell, and room was dry, and I came back home with those 2 males. Started 1 male. First male, Miss Willie line male I came back and his jaw instantly was weird. I sent you pictures, and then following after that, my basin male started. It was following right after that, which instantly took them out of the breeding program whatsoever. I immediately pulled them, got them back on their feet. They're well. They're eating. They're doing well. But I'm curious, because I made a video about what happened, and I had my assumptions, like this is what I think what happened. The humidity dropped, stress, and all this other stuff. And then there's other people saying, well, you can't really point your finger on that either. So I want to hear it from you, Warren, what you think maybe could have happened in this situation.
I think you've got all the triggers right. You've got a very dry, our eyes can be driven by too humid, and you get bacterial infections, so not enough airflow, right? Emeralds need to be in high humidity but high airflow, or else too dry, and it can cause irritation and cause infection. So they're both issues that can drive it. Stress, a male is trying his best. Even though you look at them and they might be sitting on 2 little perches, that male is still in reproductive mode, and that causes metabolic changes that can drive stress. And also, even just animals can survive with RIs for a long period of time that go unnoticed, especially lower respiratory infections. If you pair up animals together and you don't know they've got an RI, then that can flare up because of stress and because of other changes. It's one of those things, you're never going to be able to control all of that. You're never going to have the room that has a group of animals that will never not have an issue flare up for no obvious reason.
Right. Now, is an RI kind of treated like a cold, like, a human could give a cold to another human in that type of stuff?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Mainly transmitted through water, you would say, like drinking the same
water or through or physical contact. I've seen animals that are in groups that will go past each other and against each other's faces and so on, but through water certainly.
So
but then again, I've also years ago seen animals that were literally drooling, right? Emeralds that were drooling, and in an enclosure that had optimal variance from the mid 70s to a 98-degree basking site, they move themselves to that 98-degree basking site, and within a week they're not drooling, and this was without medication.
Right. Heat. Yeah.
Again, part of it is, and I've said it many times to different people, I don't think we offer the thermoregulatory gradient that animals need. We think, 84 degrees and it can go to 82 or 86 or whatever, and that's enough. I think they need a broad range. I've been in rainforests, and it's not all sitting at a perfect 82 degrees or 84. It changes a lot depending on where you are and whether the sun's hitting you or not. So I think you need to be able to offer a much broader thermal gradient, and small enclosures don't offer that. And as a result, that's going to potentially put some level of stress on animals.
And you were there firsthand, Warren, when I got in these Miss Willie lines from Desiree and Steven, and I showed you that one female that always had that weird kind of jaw, and I took it in.
But I've got a female that produces it every 2 years, and her jaw kind of one lip hangs down a little bit.
Right.
It's not an RI thing. I think it's a tooth issue or something like that there. But I've seen that in multiple emeralds over time. But in that one you did, I think there was an issue.
There was, but it's still like doing a weird mouth thing. Now, I'm telling you what I'm observing here, okay? What I'm noticing is it has some sort of clear mucus or something because it clogs the nostrils. And I want to say, whenever I see those dry snot covering those nostril holes, that's when she's opening her mouth. And I'm sure because she's a mouth breather, she's trying to breathe, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But I've taken her to the vet. I bait-rolled her that she's, just because I thought she had all right. And she eats, she does everything normal, but she still does that mouth thing. And it's like
some animals are more mucousy than others. You've seen it in kids.
So, but what would it not be a bad thing to pair her still? You're saying I could still pair that animal?
Yeah, again, I don't see a real issue in it, unless she's sitting drooling and really struggling.
Yeah,
she's sitting coiled tightly, and just doing what she should be doing. I don't see a problem with that. Again,
she's a weird animal. So she purrs perfectly, but then she'll drink for like 30 minutes. Like she'll bury her head in the bowl and just sit there. And
she's hydrating. That's what you want to see.
It's great, but it's also weird. It's like I've never seen nobody else looks like that. And I'm like, dude, whatever. But she does.
I have people in my department that walk around with 4-gallon jugs of water and they're constantly consuming. And I've got,
a liter.
So again, everybody's different.
Different.
And for me, for your animals, I think the biggest thing with them is they're old animals.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? They're older, right? They're 10 plus years old.
Plus, yeah.
And some of them probably have never been bred before.
Virgins, yeah.
And that can be the issue. It might take a long time to get them into a cycle to breed.
Yeah.
It is a cycling process.
Right.
So it might take years before they actually get into a point of breeding. I think they will.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a case of just saying, I'm going to pair them this year and I'm going to expect to get babies. It might not happen. It might take a while. I feel that animals, and Keith McPeak said the same thing over years, and several other people have, the animals need to really get into that rhythm of your room.
Yeah.
And that's why whenever, I don't know what's going to happen with my stuff this year, moving from Tulsa to Blacksburg, temperature differences, elevation differences. I've got 15 pairs put together. None of them might breed, or everything might breed, but they might be out of a totally different schedule than what they were in Oklahoma because of the temperature that was in my room. So it's building animals up into that rhythm of that room. And I think it takes a number of years, but you've had your animals with you, especially those Miss Willie ones, for a couple of years now.
Yeah, but I'm in a new room though. That's the thing.
But you didn't move, 1,000 miles east, west. You moved 5 minutes. So
5 minutes, yeah.
Probably right. A lot of change, right?
Yeah.
So I think you'll be fine.
Now, but I will hold on though. I will say though, Warren, because I came from a room that did not have central AC. Like the AC just wasn't as controlled as it is in this room. Like this room, it is fucking set to whatever I want it to be set at, and it's exactly mid-70s.
Yeah, I think you'll be totally fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna have an issue. I don't think it's gonna be an issue. Feed them, make sure they got fresh water, put them together, forget about it. Forget it. Just leave them alone. Don't stress.
Oh, they got. Well,
don't be taking them out from the purchase to show everybody. Leave them alone. And no, never, not at all. And I think, and just if you got a male that you want to pair with a female, put them together. And if they don't breed with it for the first month, that's fine. Just keep them together for the season. And if they don't breed throughout the time that you see them, they might be breeding at night. Leave them alone. And if nothing comes of it, next year, put the female with a different male.
So at what point do you say, fuck it, I'm pulling this male and I'll wait till next year? What March? Gotcha.
Yeah. If you've been paired for months and not seen anything, guaranteed.
I'm not. I've got pairings that I've never even seen breedings from, and I get litters. Because I'm not there watching them all day every day, and I'm not there all night every night watching them. So again, for me, I don't need to produce animals. This year, I didn't want to produce anything because of the whole move, and it turned out to be one of my best seasons in terms of what was produced. But I'm happy to put animals together, and if they don't breed, they don't breed. Because I know that next year I'll put a different pair together, or even the same pair, and they might breed next year. You know, we gotta remove that kind of they must breed because we put them together and I must get offspring. It's an experiment.
Hold on, Dave, real quick. I don't want to lose this. I'm sorry. Don't give me a fucking attitude. I'm just kidding.
So hand that appears from Dave. That's pretty good.
So since I potentially have females, I've never. Well, actually, I know they've never done a litter before. And, you know, there is, like we were talking about, a sense where you could push things to go when you want them to go. Is it just really up to me when I have to find out when that time is for them, just to base off their looks? Like, wait.
If I was you right now with your animals, what are we? We're at the end of August, beginning of September. I would start every 10 days feeding them a smaller meal. The female, right? And I would start putting them through a cycling.
Got it.
Right, because you need to you want to cycle them in some shape or form, right? Whether it's lighting, whether it's temperature, whether it's humidity, whether it's whatever. And in the tropics, there's lots of change, right? There's a wet season and a dry season. It's really a wet season and a slightly less wet season. So we can do that, right? We can simulate that if you want to. There is a temperature variation. It could be a handful of degrees, but it's a temperature variation. You can simulate that if you want to. And I will say that I keep my emeralds at 85 ambient during the day and 81 at night. Right? I drop at 4 degrees. It drops at 8 p.m. and it comes back on again at 6 p.m. to bring it back up. You can offer it in food cycling because food is not consistent throughout the year in the wild. It goes through boom and bust phases, which is why towards the end of like September, October, that's whenever I feed more frequently with smaller meals. I simulate that boom period where there's a lot of food available. And the only reason I give smaller meals is because I can give smaller meals more frequently and I know they're being digested and pushed through. You can simulate day length, right? So you can go in and you can change your day length, but in the tropics, it doesn't change a lot. But what we consider a lot, what emeralds consider a lot in the tropics might not be a lot to us. You know, the change of 30 minutes could be enough of a trigger. So there's lots of different stimuli, and I think you only need to get one. And Vin Russo said the same thing many times. You only need one of those. And my feeling is food's the easiest one to do.
I would say so too, because one thing I've been doing a bit different, I think, for probably the most people is I very, very rarely spray any of my animals, whether it's the neonates or the adults. I don't really give them any kind of change in terms of, wet or dry, any attempt at that. It's mostly food and temperature. Now, what I've been seeing with mine, the way I'm keeping them in this back room, is pretty close to natural weather because it's basically a back storage room. I'm in Florida, so I've got the benefit of somewhat similar temperature and humidity, and I just let it fluctuate completely naturally with the season. So it fluctuates up and down all day. And what I noticed with them breeding in the back there, as opposed to the other room, is the light does. I wouldn't say it's the singular trigger, but they're very responsive to it. It's like when they start kicking in breeding, that male is after her 20-30 minutes after that light starts to come down, before it's even actually dark. And it's like that's the 2 times I'm most seeing activity with them, is basically right at dusk. He's immediately after her, and then around midnight or so, I'm seeing it as well. So it's been kind of an interesting experiment doing that back there, and that's with no external heat or anything.
So maybe best it's good to go with your natural, whatever's happening naturally is what you're saying.
Well, I wouldn't say that's going to work for everybody. Being in Florida, I can get away with that. I don't think that's necessarily going to work in everybody's rooms. It's more of that rhythm of the room approach.
I'm like you though, Chris. I'm in Southern California, and I do have I have a window here that shines in normal daylight in the morning, and then also shines it when obviously goes dark when it goes dark. And I have Alexa set up to don't say anything, Alexa, shut up. I have Alexa set up to where she turns my lights off and on when the sun comes up, when the sun goes down. And I guess that if we're looking for one thing to stick to cycling, I guess that really doesn't matter, like Warren was saying. Because I want to shoot for food cycling, like
Yeah, I would agree. I think food cycling is the most important, I would say, or at least what seems to be the most consistent. But I've been doing kind of a combination of all of them, but in a somewhat uncontrolled manner, just letting nature do its thing. Like I said, that room, the way it kind of functions is I've got shades across all the windows, and there's AC in the room, but there's so much sun that comes through that it's kind of, it fluctuates all day, and it's almost as if you just kind of took Warren, you're a base guy. It's like if you took the natural weather and compressed it a bit, bring the peaks down a few degrees and bring the lows up slightly.
And you want to slap the shit out of it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. What was that?
And then you want to slap the shit out of it?
Yeah. But yeah, just that's kind of how it functions, and I've been doing that for a couple of years, and it seems to work really well. In this particular setup, I'm seeing really consistent results with them so far. But yeah, I see that on there. I disagree that they need massive rainfall. That's been my experience too. I don't think it's bad to spray them or anything like that. I just have been kind of intentionally experimenting with not using that as a trigger, or not using that even as part of their husbandry to see how it works. And I'm finding that they're shedding clean without, I don't have any shedding issues. I don't have any feeding, defecation, or breeding issues whatsoever.
Warren, you said this, I forgot where it was, could have been on my podcast somewhere, but you said that if you have to run your snake under high pressure water to get them to shit, that's not really a good thing.
It's not natural. It shows that your animal is dehydrated. And what that water is doing, when you hit an animal with water, it's creating pressure on the side of the body, so it's resulting in muscle movement, and that's helping it defecate. That's not normal. So the animal's in too small of an enclosure, or more often than not, it's dehydrated. You'll see it in green trees that they will prolapse. Even emeralds will do the same thing. If they're dehydrated, they'll prolapse. They're trying to squeeze out. Whenever they've eaten and that food is being processed, they're pulling as much water out of it as possible because they need it, and therefore pushing out a dry, defecated turd is not easy, and they're going to prolapse. My animals, I keep them very well hydrated. There's always arboreal water bowls. I saw it in the chat there about keeping them over water. I keep my neonates over water for the first year because I think they dehydrate easily. So give them as much opportunity to drink, but just keep it clean. Clean it every other day or every day.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you can't do that, then keep them over paper towels, but have multiple water bowls right up beside them where they're perching so they can drink. They want to be able to find water. And you'll see it as well. You'll see it in ball pythons. You'll see it in bugs. You'll see it in corn snakes. Put in fresh water into your snake, and I can guarantee you, close that rack or close that tub and come back 30 minutes later, and they're all drinking from that water. There's something about fresh water.
Yeah, they love
it. Stimulates animals to drink. So give them fresh
I was going to ask you that. Do we know exactly what that is that they're sensing?
I don't know, but whenever it rains, there's a smell.
I think so. I think there's a different smell between a water bowl that has no water or dirty water compared to fresh water.
So it's just a smell, yeah.
Anytime I've been in the rainforest, even here in Virginia or even in Oklahoma, once it rains, there is a total change in the smell.
Yeah.
It's just something different, and it stimulates activity. I think part of it could simply be it stimulates a change in activity, and they stumble upon the water. And in the rainforest, there's a lot of water. They're not coming down to the ground to drink from streams and stuff. There's water accumulating in epiphytes and bromeliads and so on. It's getting changed every day, so it's fresh. It's not stagnating.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it. Would you want stagnant water? And I think the answer is no, right?
Yeah.
Why should they? Right? Yeah. I'm not going to put a stale beer that's been sitting there for 3 days. I'm going to want the fresh one that I just pull out of the fridge, right? So I think these are the same, right? So.
It reminds me, and I've seen some people, make the claim that they don't drink they won't drink any kind of standing water, and I just think that's absurd. It just has to be fresh.
Yeah.
And it has to be, changed frequently. If you could do every day, that's ideal. But I try not to go, like with the babies and the juveniles, I do every day or at longest every other day.
Yeah.
And then the adults, I basically do the same thing, but sometimes I'll go 3 days, but I try not to go, longer than 2 days in most cases. And you'll see it, like we've all seen it. You you change that water in the afternoon, or you know, you come back in as soon as it's dark and everybody's heads down and they're chugging.
That's it. You know, they're active at night. You know, once they're active and moving, you want to give the greatest chance that they're going to stumble upon a water source.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, once they stumble upon it, they're going to drink from it.
Yeah.
If it's for 20 seconds, cool. If it's for 20 minutes, cool. But you want to give them that opportunity. And if you've only got this tiny water bowl in the corner of the enclosure, it's got water that hasn't been changed in 2 weeks, I think the likelihood of them stumbling upon it is slim, and the likelihood of them drinking from it is slim as well.
Well, and that's something I've mentioned to people, because, you know, people have, I think, sometimes had misconceptions about keeping over water, or, you know, they don't agree with it or whatever. But I think one of the benefits of doing that, you know, either keeping over water or keeping over, you know, large enough water sources for juveniles to where it's effectively the same, you know, similar kind of setup. You know, if an animal takes a meal and it's going to sit there and rest in that same spot for a couple of days, I'm assuming that if the water bowl's on the opposite side of where it chose to sit, it just doesn't drink for a few days. Whereas if it's right underneath it and it can find it very easily, it's going to drink, you know, every single day. And so I think that's really crucial for this species, is just to make sure that they always have that water easily available to them. For the adults, I don't always have arboreal water bowls. But I definitely always put it in for the females when they're gravid, because I just, you know, their movements are a little more careful. They're not going around as much generally. So I try to make it as easy on them to find as possible.
Me and all your followers seen you hand feed your fucking snakes water. Okay. You go far beyond. It's gnarly.
I did it with the one female the other day. She actually just drank right out of a little, deli cup. It was pretty cool. I got a video. I haven't posted it, but I got video of that. It was pretty cool.
No, I mean,
I don't have time for that.
Or do you have any females that, you know, won't shit after the first meal, and you just wait for the second meal, or do you not?
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. I don't monitor defecation. Years ago, I would have the feed chart and the defecation chart and the shed chart. I don't do that. The only thing I keep feed charts for are neonates that I'm going to be selling, because I want the person that's going to get that animal to say, right, here you go, it's fed this many times and so on. I haven't kept a feed chart for any animal, any adult, in years, because I always forget to fill things in, you know. And it's like I've got 120 something snakes, and I'm not going to go right. It's like having. I would love to use one of these, you know, programs, you know, for monitoring, right? This snake pinky and then it defecated. I just don't have time for that, you know? Yeah. So I don't monitor that. I generally know the animal. So I'm saying, right, you know what? It hasn't fed in a couple of weeks, so maybe I need to check this. Or it's shed, but the only shed that I care about is the shed after a female ovulates, right?
That's what you document.
Right. So that's the only one I care about.
Yeah.
That's the one that matters.
Or if I'm working with a snake and think, you know what, it's fed for a bunch of times and it hasn't defecated, maybe I need to check it. But again, my animals are very active at night. They move around, they drink a lot of water, and they defecate. So it's, you know, I've never had to, you know, I know some people, due to where they live, they might live in, I know that Steve Volk uses a really cool rain chamber that he had built, temperature controls. But I think he also lives in Nevada or Vegas or somewhere, right?
Colorado. It's Colorado.
Oh, he's Colorado, but dry, right? Really dry.
Yeah.
So I think that can be sometimes where you need it. Again, it's a region-specific thing.
That's one of the just to insert something with that, with this species. Yeah. It was really with anything. It's trying to get new people to the species to understand that, like, there is no one-size-fits-all solution for everything. No, you've got to kind of listen to what everybody's saying and figure out what's going to work for your region. Because whereas I don't personally need to spray. For me, humidity being in Florida, it's really not a problem. Obviously, you know, it's pretty easy to get it where I need to be, but that's a totally different ballpark, you know, in like I said, where Steve is at. So just kind of understanding that when you're getting into it is pretty crucial, I think, for newcomers.
And Chris, what do you think about the chances of me having to run into this RI issue if I had them on Cocoa Chip last year? Mind you, I had them during this dry spell. They were over fucking puppy pads, and I just recently changed, which was the fucking smartest thing I've ever done, because I'm in a climate where it's too dry for that. And I got that idea from the homie Socrates because he's in Florida and he could get away with that shit. But I get away with that stuff.
What does the puppy pad do? What's the whole idea behind a puppy pad?
How easy it is to clean, I think, and also
the basic. What is, if you think about a puppy pad, what it's there for? What's the point of a puppy pad? Absorb humidity.
Right.
It's not to release humidity, because the last thing you want is like a diaper. The last thing you want, which you know all about, MJ, right? The last thing you want is your darling little baby to have pissed itself, and then that to be released from the diaper.
Running down, yeah.
Right? And causing skin issues. These puppy pads are retaining that, and they're locking it in place. They're not releasing it and therefore increasing humidity.
They're sucking it all in.
And that's, see, for me,
environment, they'll work great because the air is naturally humid.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a drier area like California and where you are, then that's locking in that humidity. It's taking it out of the air.
Yeah.
You would be better to have a substrate or at least something in the enclosure which is allowing water to be released to increase the humidity. And I think having the puppy pads is going to be counterintuitive because you're going to have something that's going to add humidity to it and something that's locking it away. So I think puppy pads are great for in the right environment.
Yeah.
I just don't think they're right in the environment that is naturally dry.
Yeah, for me they work, and the lazy factor of just being able to fold it up and nothing drips. Yeah, I like the maintenance factor of it works really good for me, and it's been working consistently to where I know, okay, this isn't causing me any issues.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would probably be a very different story if I was in a different state, or even a different, potentially a different room.
Yeah, so I go to one of the big box hardware stores and I buy that $3 box or bag of cypress mulch.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I use for my emeralds and my Amazon and any of my corrales.
Wow.
Yeah, my friend keeps white lips that way, and the cypress mulch works really well.
Yeah, my Sumatran short tails are on the same stuff. My Brazilian rainbows are on the same stuff. My Colombian rainbows are on the same stuff.
Where do you get that at, Warren? The cypress mulch?
It's like it's Lowe's, Home Depot, that kind of Ace Hardware.
Do you treat any of that stuff, or you just throw that in? No, just
snake mites.
Huh? Okay.
It doesn't have snake mites. I think it's fine as long as you get one that doesn't have any insecticide treatments. You're sorted. I just take out the big chunks from it. Like the really big, long, spiky bit that could stab you in the eyeball.
Yeah, vampire snakes. Yeah.
I don't want my snakes shanking each other, in the middle of the night. But I've been using that for years. I love the idea of using cocoa blocks and all that kind of stuff. It's just so damn expensive.
Yeah.
And if you're replacing it, if you need to get something that you need to get a shaker to remove all of the dust from it, then that's a lot of work, a lot of expense. I just pick up a $3 bag of cypress mulch that does multiple enclosures, and there you go. Next month I replace it and swap it out for a different one.
Yeah.
Have you dealt with any kind of mold issues at all with that?
No.
Nice.
No, it's all pretty straightforward, and even if it did, at $3 a bag,
Oh yeah. I mean, just replace it, clean it up, replace it for nothing.
And still be, ahead of the game. But I've used that for years, and I've never had a problem with it. And
I've considered switching just because I like the way it looks better, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But every time I think that, and then I'm like, when I have I got to clean up a cage, I just roll up that puppy pad and toss it out.
I know, it's easy.
It's pretty easy. I might stick with this. It's pretty simple.
With all of my boa sigma and boa imperator, I just swapped them all over onto aspen chips. And recently I got a bunch of Antaresia. I don't know what's happened to me. It must be getting old. But I just bought a ton of Colombian rainbow boa morphs, and I bought a ton of Antaresia. And I keep the Antaresia on cypress chips because they look, they look great and it works great. And I keep every other snake now, all my sigma and my imperator on just boa chip, the aspen chips or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they're fantastic. They look good. They bury into it. And I
Is
buy
that the larger cut, like the larger chips, not the dustier stuff.
I buy it from like that Tractor Supply kind of store where I know there's not snake mites.
Right.
And the snakes are loving it. And it's so easy to clean. It smells nice. I was finding out because I was using rolls of paper that I was getting from Uline, and it had a smell to it. It's weird that cardboard has a smell to it. And I was like, I'm not really a big fan of that. Whereas this stuff smells a little bit fresher,
Yeah. Now, Chris, listen, I want to finish the last 30 minutes or so kind of talking about what's next to you, man. What'd you bring to show off?
Oh, just a couple of the babies. This is Uno. Oh, I don't know if you just saw that. The
strike.
Yeah, just struck the tub.
Yeah.
This is Uno.
Productions now, right? If you want to break all that down.
Yeah. These are animals I produced the last couple of years. The last Uno I produced in 2021, and then the other ones I'll show were 2022. But hang on, sorry, putting gloves on here. I'm neurotic with that.
Man, you switched to gloves. Oh, what happened to the clear ones?
Oh, I still use those bad boys. So this is Uno. He was one of Artemis's babies, so he was my favorite kind of pick of the litter. He's about 18 months now, eating little rat pup or adult mice. I don't know if he's picking up that clear here. Hopefully that's picking up clear.
Yeah, that's good. Just bring it back just a little bit. Yeah, right. That's good right there. Yeah, that's
okay.
Yeah.
So he was my favorite. He's still probably my favorite. You asked me the other day if of my productions, which one's my favorite, and this is my boy here. So he was like a perfect little snake, just one of those ones that ate first try. Everything about it was on point with him. So
Warren, do you do mice at all to your baby emeralds, or do you go straight to rats, Warren?
No, I generally start on, if I can offer hopper mice, I will. If they don't go for it, then they'll start on pink or hopper rats, depending.
Have you found any tendency towards mice or rats with them?
I tend to find that they'll either take one or the other, as long as they're warm enough. The ones that don't take mice will take rats, vice versa.
I found mine overall surprisingly more have responded to mice than rats, but I haven't had nearly the numbers that you have. So
and I feel that with emeralds, I think with any of them, I think a larger mouse is better than a smaller or an equivalent size rat, because of a pink rat has got a lot of milk inside it. It's got it's just a different. The calcium's lower and so on. I think the mouse is more of a complete diet. To kick it off just for a handful of months, and then you can switch it over to those kind of fluff or weaned or hopper rats or whatever. But I don't really find a big difference, But I've got emeralds. I've got some of them that will prefer mice over rats, some that will prefer rats over mice. But ultimately, they all end up eating rats.
Yeah, they'll switch over. I was just curious, just because I've heard everybody seems to have different results with that. I know that with mine. I've got a few that only wanted to take pink rats. They want nothing to do with mice. Yeah. But most of mine tended to respond to mice better. Yeah. So I was going to show this one. I guess I still will. We'll see how it what its behavior is like. Let's see. This is one of the anaconda phase neos from December. Oh yeah, if that one will show up here. Yep. Oop. Got this backwards down.
Do you know the sex of that yet, Chris?
I haven't actually probed it, but I believe it's female just based on the behavior and the structure of the body and head. But I haven't actually probed it yet, so I'm not certain of that.
Dude, that is so nice.
Yeah, this one, I'm really happy with this one. I mean, I like both of the babies that I got, the anaconda phase babies, but this one's definitely my favorite because I think it's going to look the most like the mother. Oop.
And Warren, anaconda, same game plan for your northerns, right? You don't do anything different or anything like that.
They're all northerns,
right?
They're all north. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, there's no difference genetically. They're still a northern. The idea that recently I've heard people saying that. They think that new locality head spots come from one place and anacondas come from another place and patterns come from another place, and I don't think that's true. They all come throughout Suriname and Guyana.
And Ed has seen head spots popping up on some of the basins too, right?
And patternless. I've seen patternless and anaconda phase basins.
Yeah, it seems to be pretty consistent in all the regions, and you can even see some of those things on like iNaturalist.
Right, exactly.
You'll see some pictures of.
Again, I think that's this year I'm going to pair a anaconda male with a patterned female to produce offspring that I'll hold back just to breed back to each other and to breed back to the parents, just to try and really start understanding the heritability of the anaconda phase.
Do you know much about this? Have you spoken with Glenn Bogue at all at Dutch Arboreals?
I haven't. I haven't.
I had an interesting conversation with him. So there seems to be something, and almost, and I'm definitely not. I'm obviously not even close to the same league as you as understanding genetics, so I may be speaking out of my ass here, but I believe there's something a little bit along the lines of, is it the platy daddy morph stuff in ball pythons, where there's like potentially 2 genes going on there. There's maybe something a little bit like that going on with the anaconda phase, it seems, because I believe the anaconda phase siblings are capable of producing the ones that look kind of in between the normal pattern and the anaconda phase pattern. So he's had some interesting results with that.
I think it's possible. Again, I just don't think there's been enough pairings of animals where we know are from a background that is not anaconda and those that are only anaconda.
Yeah.
I think again, the pairings, it's not, these are not like, ball pythons and corn snakes that we can breed very frequently and very young and get, kind of get the numbers that we want. So it's going to take a little bit longer. But, if you I don't remember, but Tony Nicolai, maybe 18 or 19 years ago, paired anaconda to anaconda and produced unreal animals that were yellow and striped.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was theorized to be like a super.
That's what he thought at the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was just before he lost that kind of whole group of animals, So again, I just don't think we know. We don't have the I do a lot of work with line breeding stuff here in the lab, and we don't have the pure this and pure that to put together to then see the offspring and then breed back yet, So that's why, I'm just for this year for fun, I'm gonna do an anaconda to a regular pattern female just to see what I get.
Yeah, and that'll be interesting because that's what these came from. The male was the same male I bred with Artemis, and then the female was the a Suriname anaconda phase. And I got kind of what I had expected from looking looking up past results, but even the 2 different anaconda phase that I would consider to be the full anaconda pattern look different from each other.
Yeah.
So it seems like you see ones that have barely any black, in them at all, that look almost patternless. They're very, very light pattern, and then some that have more white than you'd expect. So
they're
Keith
cool. Keith McPeak had animals where I think it was a pattern to an anaconda or vice versa, and he had animals that had white. There were still anaconda phase, but you had flecks of white, and others that were clearly anaconda. And then I'm going to take it further because I think this year and next year I'm going to really invest time and money in buying true patternless, not a speck of white, not a speck of black, because I want to build that into it as well. But we'll see. It's just. Has there
been anybody that's ever bred those together? Like because I've heard that there's cross compatibility, but they look different to me. The true patternless ones look different.
My friend that looked after my animals for me, Jonathan Harvey, he years ago, maybe 25, 26 years ago, back in Northern Ireland, he had a trio of true patternlists who were just out of this world, and they were ready to breed, and then brought in other animals, and regurgitation syndrome spread through his collection and wiped it all out. Never had a chance. And so I think, or a virus spread through it and he lost them. But I don't know a lot of people pairing true patternless to true patternless. I think I've seen it in Europe and have produced true patternless. I think it's defining what is patternless, what is anaconda, what is not.
Yeah.
And for me, a true patternless has got no pattern at all, not a fleck of white.
Yeah, that's my view of it.
Anaconda is pretty much, green and dark green, black. It can have the odd little fleck of white within those bubbles, but the pattern is different. It's different, not the white kind of stripes.
Yeah.
So again, I don't think we've had the pairings. I don't think we've had the number of pairings. And I'm going to spend some time with this book that we're working on, really researching the litters that have been produced to see what has been produced. Sadly, a lot of people don't keep enough pictures of the offspring that they produced to be able to show this is the parent, this is the offspring, and to show the variation within those litters from really good dorsal pictures.
Yeah. I've been bad. I take a lot of video because I'm just lazy and it's easier to do video than pictures. But I need to I've wanted to start doing that. Take those, overhead pictures like that and document.
Now, what you want to do is get a piece of sponge and get a piece of sponge, get a piece of plexiglass, put your emerald onto it, and put that over it where you're not squashing it, but you're pushing against the sponge because its body's going to go into the sponge, and then take a picture above it because then you'll get the whole dorsal pattern. The animal's not going to be wriggling around and losing focus, and then you can just put it back in. The animal's not stressed.
Yeah, that's a smart idea.
I've never heard of that. That's actually pretty.
Yeah, cool. That's exactly. That's the thing. I'm just like, anytime emeralds are not comfortable off of a perch. The chondros are much more comfortable.
They're awkward, man. Try to hold one, it's not going to work out.
That lateral compression, and they're all kind of flailing. So all of these people are like, I want to take mine out and hold it and put it around my neck, and I'm like, no.
They don't.
They feel that
they launch.
Yeah, they do. They flop. Look at any of them. They're terrible. Their accuracy at striking is awful. How they've ever been able to survive?
Terrible.
They fling themselves at it. Just food. They're
hitting the animal. Like, what are you doing? Like,
they're useless animals. They're totally useless. I don't know why I like them, but I do. So.
Before I forget, Dave sent me some awesome pictures. I'm trying to dig them up, but Dave sent me.
Are these relating to snakes, or are they relating to?
No. Yeah. Ron St. Pierre, the Emerald Tree Boas that Ron keeps.
The pixel that he's got. Yeah.
What's the deal with that? What's going on? I mean, that's not a common snake, right?
So there's been 4 or 5 of those come through in the last bunch of years. So there was a book published years ago, Kivett and Wiseman book, I think it was, and in one of the pictures it has. I might have it here on my shelf. It's got the one just like it, yellow body, green stripe.
Right.
Snakes at Sunset. Steve brought some in. Mark, he brought some in a couple of years ago, and he called them Pixel, and they show the same trait. And then Ron got this one. Now, if you look in Europe, there's an Amazon tree boa that looks exactly the same, just different colors, obviously. But it's got that lateral line. Because if you look at it, it's basically a lateral line, right? It's got a green stripe, it's got a white stripe, it's got yellow. There's a calico type line in Europe in Amazon that looks exactly the same. That's a heritable trait. So it's just one of those weird anomalies. The cool thing is that trait is not going to stand that animal out in the wild where it gets killed.
Right.
It's just as camouflaged as a green.
That could work.
Well, like designer chondros, there's no designer chondros in the fucking wild. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, from your knowledge, has Ron reproduced this snake at all?
No, Ron has just got into emeralds. Ron's a great guy. He's, like a real pioneer in the field, and I've been talking to Ron quite a bit recently, and he just really, at this point in time, he decided to really invest heavily in emeralds. Pretty much all wild caught, I believe. He's only got a couple of captive bred, but he was able to get some of the unusual ones. He's got true patternless. I think he's got anaconda phase. The cool thing about that is that if I lived in a climate where I could keep them outside for even part of the day, I would. I think that natural UV, I think the natural rain cycle, I think it could all benefit it. And I think he's giving it a shot. I think he's doing it. I'm excited to see what happens.
They respond really well to that outdoor temperature and the changes. Like I've been quarantining them. I started quarantining them about 2 years ago outside, and I was freaked out at first because I'm like, the heat. Just again, listening too much to what people say as far as what they can handle.
Oh, they can handle.
And so I was. I was. I mean, I will say the only thing with the heat, they can handle heat as long as it's not over the top and not too sustained.
As long as they can get away from it.
Yeah, and if it changes,
that whole idea of having a thermoregulatory gradient, they have to be able to move into it when they want to and move away from it when they want to.
Yeah.
But I've had them to be able to keep mine outside. We have temperatures where they could be, sitting in the high 80s here, I just think my wife would kill me if I stuck a bunch of cages outside in our lovely new community. And the kind of hobo, that, hey, honey, guess what, neighbors?
Yeah, most people are not going to appreciate it the way that you
No,
will.
not in this community anyway. So I don't want them to know that I've got snakes, period. The tortoises are fine, but not the snakes. So.
Yeah, but they do well out there, and the humidity and everything worked really well for them. I was surprised because like I said, I was nervous. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work, but I've been doing that for a couple of years. I haven't been keeping them in outdoor cages, out fully open.
Mm-hmm.
But it was in a separate building where there's no external heat, no nothing. So it's just all the natural Florida weather that they experience, and it worked really well. I think it helped. It seems to help establish them quicker because it just seems like it's, they just
high humid environment.
Mm-hmm. It's probably pretty. So of course, not exactly what they would have in their native habitat, but it seems pretty close.
Good. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. If I lived in Florida, I would have a whole row of the Exoterra or Zoom Med, the chameleon enclosures.
Yeah.
To have emeralds in them, I think, or any Corallus, I think would do really well in those.
On that, it reminds me years and years ago when I was a teenager, I worked at a wholesaler here in Central Florida, and we used to have. I actually wish those cages were still available. I can't find them online anywhere, but I think it was a European company that made them. They were calling them like the Reptilarium or something. They were these like about 6 or 7 foot tall, strong nylon screen cages, but with like a really simple to put together PVC frame. Mm-hmm. And when we would get in shipments of the Amazon tree boas, we would put them out there. And so I'd wheel that out to the front of the building, mist them down, and they would be under the little overhang. And they seemed to do really good in there, given the fact that they were still overcrowded with it being a wholesaler, of course. But they still, they seem to do well in that kind of environment, and it would be nice to do something like that, but properly.
Yeah, I've seen people do it with you get those kind of sinks that you would put in your garage, that kind of the commercial kind of.
Mm-hmm.
You can put the enclosure above that there.
Yeah,
you can mist them. You can put rain on them consistently.
Right down
that
drain,
water will go down a drain, and it's not going to stagnate in the bottom of the enclosure as well. I think if you've got the ability to do stuff outside, I think it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I never plan to move to Florida. I never plan to move again.
I can't say I fully recommend it, other than aside from good for snake weather.
Burn beside my my fireplace. I'm not leaving this place.
Yeah, if I ever move to Florida, primarily it's because what you could do with the animals outside, but I would never leave my property ever. I would fucking
I just imagine telling my wife, "Hey, honey, we're moving to Florida to look after snakes." Yeah, I think she would castrate me.
Pack your bags.
At the very least, Yeah. I don't love snakes that much.
Listen, guys, 2 hours went by quick. I thought this was an amazing episode. Just biggest things to have you guys meet. You guys all three of you guys met for the first time. I thought that's fucking awesome.
I've known Dave a long time. I've known Dave 18 years.
Oh yeah.
It's been a minute, buddy.
We'll see each other at Tinley. We'll have that bromance building again, and
I'm pretty actually
are coming back.
I'm pretty upset because I've been missing at Warren at shows for like over the last 2 years or something. When was the last time I saw you at a show?
I've gone to Arlington. Yeah, I know.
Because of all the busyness that
you had a child, and that's going to take you away from Tinley.
Shit, man. Do you only go to October Tinleys, or do you do March too?
For me?
Yeah.
This is the first time going back to Tinley in 12 years.
Holy shit.
And the reason I'm going is I'm on the board of directors for US ARC.
Nice.
So we're having a board meeting. So I'm flying in on Thursday morning. I'm going to go to the Gecko Symposium.
Oh, cool.
And then we got a board meeting, and then I might as well just stick around. I'm going to leave kind of midday Sunday. But I plan to go, if I can, every fall, every October.
Oh, cool. Well,
from where I am, I can fly from Roanoke direct into O'Hare. Okay. So a single flight should be easier. Yeah.
Well,
I've never been to a Tinley. Well, actually, that's not. I did technically. Actually, I think I did the Vended. I think it was the first Tinley.
Cool.
Either the first or second year, but I haven't been back since. So I've been meaning to.
What year was the first Tinley?
if I'm correct, because I think it was the first year that I went there and we vended, it would have been 2001 because if it was, shit, I'm maybe getting this mixed up. Was it 2000 or 2001? Right around that ballpark, I think.
Wow. Dave, what year was your first Tinley?
I thought it was like 2007 or 8.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, but Dave's very young. He looks very old with that beard, but if you shave that off, he actually looks like a 16-year-old.
Yeah, got a bitch face underneath this, buddy. I'm happy where I'm at right now.
I remember that Dave without the beard, man.
Nobody remembers that day. They just remember it because it's tramp stamp.
I might have. That's exactly right. I might have pictures somewhere of Dave sans beard. Yeah.
Dave, anything you like to close off with these gentlemen before we let them go tonight?
Oh, this guy? You want me to say something?
Yeah, Dave, you.
Shit, me? I don't know. Okay, how about this? It's for all three of you guys. So you guys had the anaconda mutation. Outside of the anaconda, you have the patternless. I don't know of any other mutations. What is the motivation of the community? Like, what are each one of you guys trying to do within this species, the locality? Where are you guys at? Let's start with Chris. Yeah, right there, my finger.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So for me, I haven't. I don't have any patternless animals. I haven't really been totally, smitten by them yet. But I haven't actually seen one of the true patternless in person. So I was kind of not totally smitten with the anaconda phase, to be honest, at first, until I saw one in person. I'm like, wow, okay, now I get it. So I've just got I'm focusing on anaconda phase, and then I'd like to line breed for high white, just like anybody else, and I like some dark stuff too. I want to basically have a nice variety of bloodlines that I'm producing. As far as locality information, I mean, I don't think there's anything. All I could say is I know what most of my animals came from Suriname shipments, but beyond that claim, I don't have anything I could say beyond that. So it would be cool. I would love to see, other regions start coming in as far as other countries exporting emeralds, but I'm not aware of that being a possibility anywhere at the moment. But that's something I've looked into before, and so that's pretty basically where my goal is, to just continue to produce nice, high quality captive bred animals, and selectively breed and line breed stuff, and produce more anaconda phase. And then, like I said, probably I'll get into the patternless once I see them and realize how awesome they are.
Okay.
Same idea as Chris. I like the idea of having multiple lines of each, so that I got multiple unrelated lines of anaconda phase, patternless phase, and the standard phase, and just to be able to produce healthy animals. I haven't told anybody, but I have an albino northern, and
oh wow,
I don't at all.
Yeah.
I was hoping
you had me rolling for a second there. I'm like,
I saw both Chris and Dave go, what?
Albino.
There was one years ago. I don't know if you guys remember the picture of the albino northern that was produced in a litter in the US, and it was just yellow, kind of unimpressive, but it was kind of cool.
Who made that?
No, I just want to produce healthy lines, and if I can produce lines that consistently produce anaconda, lines that consistently produce patternless, and lines that consistently produce the regular nice white, I think in time I'll try and pick up some of the really high white. That would be kind of nice, but I'm not in any rush. Ultimately, what I'd like is to have 40 or 50 emeralds, of which about 30 females or 40 females and 10 to 15 kind of males, something like that there, that I can cycle, year on, year off, year on, year off, and go from there. But, and if a handful produce each year, then that's cool. They don't take a lot of work. They don't eat a lot. So it's not as if it's going to eat me out of house and home. But I can imagine that in the next 10 years, I will be cycling out of pretty much everything else that I keep and just keeping emeralds and Corallus ruschenbergeri, I would think.
Sounds dreamy.
Oh, yeah. I think for a lot of us, it's still the goal is since it's still pretty early on, it's like there just needs to be more healthy captive bred animals available for anybody who's interested in them, because I know I've been kind of hoarding what I've produced so far, but my litter from Artemis this year made me glad I kept the few that I got from her the first time, because it's like, you don't, I'm not at a stage yet with them where I can say, oh, I'm just knocking it out of the park every time.
Yeah,
So,
I regret selling animals for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I there's animals that I'm like, I wish I'd kept those, and I've been considering emailing people that bought them, ask if they're available in return.
Are you bored of them yet? Are you bored?
Yeah. Here's the other thing, right? They're not consistently produced.
Yeah.
I see almost an equal number of basin litters being produced as northerns, and yet basins can be these skyrocketing prices out of this world, and northerns aren't close to that. I think that northerns are just as valuable.
Yeah.
I think line breeding is going to produce some incredible traits that are worth a decent amount of money. I haven't sold a northern emerald for less than $1,500. And people will say, but I can buy a wild caught from X, for $350. And I'm like, yeah, go get it.
Good luck.
And you know what? It might do well or it might not. But this is what I'm selling mine for.
Yeah.
I've only got this number available, and that's it. So I'm part of the group that feels that they're worth more money than people are seeing them as because they see wild caughts going for peanuts. So if I've got a litter, and I can tell you, I don't know if I've ever advertised any animals from a litter, maybe once on Instagram or something like that, and it's gone within minutes.
All you do is message people.
Yeah, I've got enough people that want them.
Yeah.
At that price, and anacondas will be way more expensive than that. For captive bred.
Yeah, people have inquired, and I honestly just say I'm not even really sure what to tell
I
you.
I can tell you that once we start producing anacondas, they're going to be a minimum of 2,500.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
That's it. Yeah. Because I think that's what they're worth.
Yeah.
Patternless is the same. I think that's what it's worth. And I don't want it to be this throwaway animal. Yeah, I don't want it to be that one. It's not going to decrease in value, right? So you're buying a work of art. You're buying kind of genetic work of art, so appreciate it for what it is. You do that for a good piece of art, kind of thing, So
maybe the snake guys don't want me to be in this position, but I'll tell you what, pure Miss Willie line, 6,500 motherfuckers.
I'm totally agree with you.
Yeah,
they're badass. I gotta get it. Yeah, I want to get some Miss Willie line at some point.
If the animals look that they're worth that, then in my opinion, people will pay it.
Yeah, but I'm not.
It looks just like another northern emerald that was $1,500, and they won't pay for it.
Right.
But if it looks different, it's got those thick, bold bands, and it's got the color, the people will pay it.
And I want to be in Coach Rice's shoes, where I'm just like, you know what? I'm holding on to it. I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna hoard.
It gets a little silly though. I mean, it's you.
I want to be silly. That is something that's cool though. That's a cool kind of silly, bro. Like, I'm sorry, but it is like people would love to be in that position. Like stuff that you're sitting on that you made. That's
it's a good feeling. It's definitely a good feeling, but it definitely gets to a point where it's like, all right, I remember Ed saying, I think on your show, Ed said something one time. I think I asked a question in the chat when you interviewed him, like, what do you use to determine holdbacks? And he pretty much just eventually got to the point of saying, like, you can kind of convince yourself there's something cool about every single one of them and start wanting to hold it back. And that's what I've been doing. It's like, I'm looking at every little thing going, oh shit, well, I like that. I can't let this one go now. And I mean, there's a point where it's going to get a little dumb. So
just hold back enough males and enough females to keep you going.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think Ed did say that he would count the diamonds, the white scalations, to where he would keep the ones with the most white and just.
I think he's a jeweler's lens or something, right?
I don't have the patience for that or the time. but look what he's done from that.
I think it's awesome
and that's why he can produce really high-end animals and get a lot of money for them.
Yeah,
I'm not doing that. This is a hobby. I get paid well.
Day by day, Warren, you're not gonna be the working man forever, are you? Come on, we need to do the.
What I do here, dude, I'll die in this office. If I didn't have windows here, people would only know that I'm dead because it'd be a bad smell and a fluid leaking out from under the door. I'll never retire. I love
regurg.
I love my job. So.
Hey, I love this episode. I appreciate you two so much. Chris, before we let you go, what do you have to say to all the people tapping in and showing you support, man?
Thanks a lot, man. I mean, I'm very honored to even be included in this talk. So I definitely don't feel like I'm in the elite group. but I appreciate being here, and it's been great meeting with you guys and talking, and I could pick everybody's brains for another 2 or 3 hours here if we had time. So, and I appreciate everybody that came to support and shows me love on Instagram and everything. So thanks a lot to everybody.
Warren, what do you have to say to all the love and support out there, buddy? Because you for sure, man, huge inspiration to so many of us. So anyone out there who listened tonight and enjoyed it, what do you have to say to everyone out there?
Well, they need to get a life, because I don't know why I'd be inspirational to anyone. I'm just a hobbit, and I look up to so many other people. I'm still learning. I think the important thing is that you're always learning.
Yeah.
Never think that you're at the point where you don't need to listen to other opinions. Diversity of thought's important, and that works with reptiles through to whatever you're doing. So no, I'm always glad to talk snakes. I've said it before. I think I said it to you, MJ. I can talk to anyone for any length of time about any topic. It's just it's just the joy of being Irish. You can bullshit for hours. So
Dave's on that type of time though too, man. I've been cutting off 2-hour episodes, and he gets this twitch in his eye, like, why did you just quit right? Like, Dave usually his motor doesn't start running till about 2 hours plus.
About 2 hours. About 2 hours. I'm ready to go. Yeah.
That's what I see at Dave at shows. It's normally about 11:15 that Dave really kicks in.
Yeah,
that's what you want to be around, Dave, buddy.
That's it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Tinley, so it should be fun catching up there.
Me too. It's been great.
Do me a favor. I want to get the likes up, and please go give him a follow. Boa Booth on Instagram and Snake Spirit on IG. And guys, would you say that's the best way to get in contact with you for whatever reason is Instagram or what's best?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, Instagram. I tend to not. I've said it in every freaking thing. I tend to not accept friend requests on Facebook from people I don't know, because my Facebook is really boring. It's my family, and
I love it.
What's going on with my house and all that. It's rarely snakes. So I don't know if you want to watch that there. But generally, you message me through it, it's totally fine. But Instagram is probably the one that I'm using most. And I went through a period. I try to post every day. Obviously, in the last 6 or 7 months, because of the move, I wasn't. But I'm back into that, and I'm starting to post every day or two. So Instagram's a good one to get me through, and I'm always happy to chat, So as long as I might take me a day or two to get back to you, but I'll always offer help, So.
Well, I mean, was the third time you've been back here? In fact, you're on the show 3 times, I think, right? So I mean,
it could be 3 or 2 or 3 or 4, yeah.
One on Unfiltered, twice here.
That could, possibly, yeah.
But all I know is that plenty more podcasts to come with Dr. Warren Booth and Coach Rice. But guys, please do me a favor and give it up for these two. It's a wrap. All right, guys. Hey, have a good night. Again, thank you so much for coming through, and we'll catch you guys next time, all right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Good night, man.
Take it easy.
Whew. Good episode, man. Definitely packed full of information. Took a lot of notes, and I'm very excited, man. How do you feel about tonight's episode, Dave?
Feel good, man. Honestly, I got a few things I wanted to fit in. I'm just going to call Warren as soon as we're done with this. But no, it's cool, man. I like hearing about the community. I like hearing about the talk, the direction you guys are going in. I can't tell whether or not, I hear a lot of horror stories about the species, and I'm assuming that most of that's wrapped around importation of these animals and getting them in and having trouble getting them to acclimate.
Yeah.
Because listening to Warren, it sounds like you treat these like most other boa species.
As in
food cycling, temperature cycling, humidity, this, that, the other thing. He made it seem like there was 10 or 15 different ways you could do it and be successful. You got to find your own way.
Yeah. And honestly, that's why it's like finding your own way sometimes is just going through something established, aka captive born and bred, where you could just eliminate any kind of risk, as in an animal not eating or you having to go to quell or kind of putting yourself through the ringer when you don't need to, because it's not always easy. Like, I went through that shit, and luckily I had good surroundings that made me get through it. Like, Warren was always my go-to anytime I had issues with an import, and he's got me through it every single time. But everything behind me is just so established where I don't want to go through that again. Like, I'm okay. But then again, others out there, man, wish them the best and good luck. But either way, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with my breeding season this year. And I will say, man, the reason why I'm so goddamn head over heels over the emeralds is because the Miss Willie line, like the snakes I got from Forest, really mean a lot to me, and mainly and because the way they look, those snakes, like I don't see any basin that is better than those Miss Willie lines in my opinion. Like that's how much I love those snakes, and you really can't put a price on them. Like and no matter what happens breeding wise, I'll always keep these snakes. Like they're with me forever. But passion is high for them, man, and you know, day by day. This is why I appreciate any kind of guest, any information I could get with any guest that comes on the show. But I thought it was great, man. So I appreciate you, Dave, a lot. Always coming through and being my boy. Anything you want to say to anyone out there who always comes through and shows you love and support?
Well, how about this? I don't work with emeralds. I may never work with emeralds, but I know a lot of people. There's a couple very unique things coming up in that community.
Yep, and that's a fact. And mind you, there's going to be more podcasts where we discuss emeralds because this is a huge passion of mine, and we have some great friends that are dabbled into this game. But Dave, I hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Okay, guys, do me a favor, follow Dave Custom Scales on Instagram, and just be ready for the next one. But Dave, enjoy the rest of your night, buddy. I love you.
Well, keep me on. I'm going to talk to you afterwards, buddy.
Okay, cool. All right, guys, give it up. Give it up for Dave Levison, ladies and gentlemen. I'll talk to you soon, buddy. Thank you. All right, guys, do me a favor. If it's your first time tapping in, don't forget to hit the like button before you head off, and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. I appreciate all the love and support. And yeah, man, don't forget I drop my vlog tomorrow on my other YouTube channel, The Trap Vlogs. So make sure you check that out. That's going to be premiering tomorrow at 6:45 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Guys, thank you for all the love and support again. I'll catch you guys here Monday for New Breed on the Block, episode 382. But it's a wrap for this episode. Again, thank you to Dr. Warren Booth, and thank you to Coach Rice. Appreciate such a legendary episode, and it's a wrap. Catch you later, and I'm out.